Oh, see, now I want a badass stick thing that I can beat people up with. Hello, interwebs. I'm here to review the second episode of Star Wars: The Book of Boba Fett, aptly titled Chapter 2, which is a little bit funny because you go and look on Disney Plus, the episode title for the series premiere was Chapter 1. However, I distinctly remember when I popped on Disney Plus last week, and I even put it in my thumbnail, the episode title was Stranger in a Strange Land. So I guess sometime between last week and this week, they decided to go with titling is too hard. We'll just name it like Chapters of a Book because Book of Boba Fett. So I found that I was like, oh, okay, I guess you're just gonna go that way. It works perfectly fine, especially for a limited series. But I just found that kind of a little funny, interesting little tidbit there. Regardless, though, I'm gonna jump into this episode. Full spoilers, by the way. So if you have not seen the episode, just know I'm gonna go full into all of that. I'm not gonna get into like heavy stuff, but I am gonna touch upon things that happen throughout the episode. Also, just a quick address the elephant in the room. My voice does sound a little bit different because I'm currently battling a cold. I have a little bit of a fever at the moment, so I'm probably gonna make this review a little bit shorter than normal, just so I can head off to bed because I'm kind of tired and just want to go and curl up with my cat and just sleep forever. But before I can do that, it's review time. One thing I'm actually really surprised by is actually the predominant amount of time focused in this series is actually in flashback to right after the events of Return of the Jedi. Now, we got a huge chunk of that last episode, obviously, but I was surprised that this episode, honestly, the bulk of it, the second half of it, and really probably the second 2/3 of it were really all just that story, which I was kind of shocked by, given that this was more billed as the sort of storyline of Boba Fett going forward in the present day. But that is by no means to its detriment, because both stories have me entirely fascinated and hooked, and I honestly am still on the train of this is something special for Star Wars. I like The Mandalorian, didn't love it, but this takes all the learnings from that show and I think really makes this into something truly unique for Star Wars, and it's really has me engaged the entire way through. The opening of this is really nice, picking up right off of last week where we have Fennec Shand has captured one of the assassins who tried to kill Boba Fett. They bring him in front of him. They try to interrogate him. He won't say anything, so they throw him down in the Rancor pit. I thought that was a ton of fun, especially because like in The Mandalorian, whenever we got those like Easter eggy kind of moments, they felt like more like, oh, here's the character, oh, here's the thing, because we just had a character who can go and explore the entire galaxy, whereas Boba Fett, who's already a character being pulled in from lore, is literally sitting in Jabba's palace. So like using the Rancor pit and then playing on that subversion of our knowledge of it kind of felt like a little bit of fun play on things and actually felt natural to where we are in the scene, as opposed to like the random fan like references that we get throughout The Mandalorian. But then the assassin says that he was sent by the mayor, so Boba Fett goes and visits the mayor. Cool little like bit there where he goes in and just like, I'm just gonna walk right in. I'm not gonna listen to any of you. And we eventually meet the mayor, who is one of those like weird like head hump looking dudes. I forget the name of those aliens, but I liked this. The mayor says is kind of like, again, a bureaucrat. He's very much like, I'm not going to pick sides here. I'm going to just measure my words carefully and just sort of come out in whichever way I think I'm going to end up on top. So he sort of weasels his way out of being like, oh, I'm not actually the one who sent these assassins to kill you. And I believe him when he says that, but again, I think he's just trying to word himself carefully so that he can set himself up so that when he Boba Fett either wins or loses against the twins, who we will see in just a second, he'll still be in a place to either help either of them and still be good in his standing. So then we go into, we get a quick little scene where Boba goes to the bar that we saw last episode. We get to see Bet from the L Word, but then he goes outside and we see the twins, which are two Hutts, brother and sister, who basically are trying to, go after Jabba's throne. And Boba says, you're going to have to kill me if you want to do it, if you want to get that. And they have a badass Wookiee bounty hunter who I'm sure is going to not at all play a badass fight sequence later on in the series. He's not going to play into that at all by any means. I'm sure he's just there to look nice and growl a little bit. But yeah, so clearly we're setting up a big fight between the two of them. And I'm curious to see how that's going to be played out. And I think what is interesting is I think the flashback storylines, because we jump at this point to the flashback story, is kind of giving us a precursor to what worked in Boba Fett's past and why he thinks it's going to work now. Because last episode, we learned that Boba Fett wants to try and build up this old Jabba empire on the basis of mutual respect as opposed to fear. And we saw that he had earned the respect of the Tuscan Raiders back right after Return of the Jedi in the flashbacks. This episode, as we go through the entire sequence with Boba Fett and the Tuscan Raiders now is all about building a coalition of people and like building them together, training them up to take on someone who ostensibly would be much more powerful and stronger than they are. And so that's probably going to be what happens with these twins' Hutt. So I like that there's this mirroring of like a little bit ahead of what Boba's planning to do in the present day, mirrored in the past. But that doesn't mean that this is devoid of like any of its own sort of internal and interesting stuff. Everything with the Tuscan Raiders was fan-freaking-tastic. I like that we came back in and we see that it's a move time a little bit forward, and he's developed a little bit of respect. He's learning from them. He's getting to learn their culture, and he's actually like taking time to appreciate that. And initially I was kind of balked. I'm like, why would this badass bounty hunter like really care about these people? And I mean, to be fair, he might be trapped there, but I also just sort of remembered, like, Boba Fett is honestly kind of a blank slate. Most of his characterization we got is in canon is either in some books and The Mandalorian itself, where he was shown to be a fairly patient man. In most of the movies, he's a fairly silent protagonist. We get a little bit of him in episode 2, but not all that much. And so I like that we get this sort of idea of his character through here, and this is probably the most characterization he's ever gotten. And we show that he's an intelligent and actually kind of surprisingly empathetic man. And so when a train comes through and starts killing all of the Tuscan Raiders, he actually is like, all right, I'm going to go deal with this. I'm going to come back and I'm going to help you. And I love the sequence where he just goes to the bar, beats up the guys, and takes all of their, the gang people, just takes their speeders. Now, I was a little bit confused because at first I thought that the people in the bar were actually the people running the train. So I think that could have been a little bit clearer in the communication. But overall, it was a lot of fun. I thought that was a good bit. And again, I like that this sequence, and especially all this stuff in Flashback, it doesn't give us too much. It gives us just enough exposition in the visuals and in what's going on to show us what's going on without like sitting here and being like, we're going to explain every single piece to you. And that is no more telegraphed and shown in the training montage that we get here, because honestly, this training montage where we have Boba coming back and teaching the Tuscan Raiders how to attack the train, it could have played out like a heist film, right? Where he sits down and explains the plan, we see exactly what he's going to do, and we get little bits of that with like the kid like signaling the train and everything. But everything else is told through the visual language. We see him training them, and we see them getting better, and we see the little tricks that he's teaching them to do this specific action. So it's kind of like a heist film where we do see the entire plan played out in front of us beforehand, but then we get to also see it in action. And the joy of the heist movie is seeing a plan played out in action. But it isn't sat there and exposited to us. It's all explained visually. And so I thought that, and it also just sort of plays off the fact that he's a good teacher. He's helping the Tuscan Raiders. All really excellent stuff. And then the action sequence, I don't really have much more to say about it other than it was really, really solid, well portrayed, visually cute. It was great on the budget that the show has. Just a really nice and like thoughtful and awesome badass train sequence. But then this wraps us out in the episode where I really like that Boba sort of sat down with the people who were running the train and basically said, hey, Tuscan Raiders, we're civilized people now. We're no longer raiders, basically kind of like presenting that civilized face, because Tuscan Raiders obviously have been seen as just savages, and in many cases they kind of were that, in the sense that they were just people scattered around and they didn't necessarily have any tools to fight back. And I like that Boba is sort of like setting these people up to get greater respect and money and actually build up their status in this world in a really clear and concise way, and I thought that was just really excellent. But what I really appreciated the most is the sequence after this, where we actually learn a ton about Tuscan Raider culture. I mean, like, Tuscans were these like one-off like really alien monsters that we saw in like one random scene in the first Star Wars movie, and then it got developed a little bit, mostly as just, again, savages in the prequel movies and things like that. And they get some shading of empathy in episode 2 after Anakin kills them all and feels bad about it, but we haven't really gotten to know a lot about their culture, at least as far as I know, maybe in like some of the ancillary stuff. But this was like actually developing this species and actually showing us what their culture was like, and getting to learn more about them and more about Tatooine too, in that like there used to be sea here, and they used to be many tribes coming together. And so this idea of the Tuscan Raiders kind of forming a coalition, forming a nation, would be kind of an interesting idea. There might be the only thing negative I could possibly say about all of this is it does have a little bit of shades of the white savior complex. Now, I know that that's not exactly a one-for-one, given that the Tuscan Raiders are obviously, you know, we don't see their face, we don't see skin color, we don't know their ethnicity, but they are kind of painted as that, like, noble savage kind of idea that you would see indigenous folks in many Western fictions, and then Boba Fett is, you know, you can talk about, like, whether or not he's coded as a white man or not, the actor, as well as the character. But again, there is this sort of idea of as someone from a more developed culture coming into a quote-unquote lesser developed savage culture and being their savior and teaching them how to do the things. So, and that kind of plays into the Western idea of this show. So again, I'm not knocking it, I'm not hating on it, I'm not saying like this is the worst thing ever. I actually am saying I really enjoyed the storyline, found it very, very interesting. But there are shades of that, and that's something to at least acknowledge when talking about the show. And I'm curious to see if they'll develop that or play upon that or subvert that in any way going forward. And he'll give more agency to them. But I'm curious. So overall, I think this is a really something special for Star Wars. You know, some tropes aside, I think this is a really strong entry. I think the visual language, the filmmaking technique on display is amazing. The acting is wonderful. The storyline has me intrigued. The action is great. So far, 2 episodes in, this is a good contender for my favorite Disney Star Wars thing so far. We'll see if that continues going into next week. But until then, I hope you all live long and prosper.